Hey, yo, what up? Welcome back. This is not a podcast. It's just my thoughts with Rob Markman. All right. Now, on Friday, we talked about it, man. We got the first song from the Clipse from their upcoming album that God sorted out. The song was called Ace Trumpets. Talked about it here on Friday. I mean, just a dope song, just an immaculate return for a group that's been gone for 16 years. Obviously, Push has remained solo. Malice went to do his own thing, but the group is now back. The brothers are now back. The album drops July 11th. So today, the rollout begins, right? So today, Pusha and Malice, or not today, but they had previously sat with Frazier Tharpe. Shout out to Frazier, man, amazing journalist. They sat with him for GQ, and today the article published, right? And they talked about the new album. They talked about how it all came together, and they talked about putting it out through Roc Nation. We all saw the picture of them standing in front of the paper plane, signifying that they were now affiliated with Roc Nation. And they talked about one song in particular called Chains and Whips, which features Kendrick Lamar. The internet had been speculating about this song and this feature for a while. We heard a version of the song a couple of years ago during a Louis Vuitton fashion show. Full disclosure. And, I was guarding what I said in my last video, but full disclosure, I've heard the entire album. I've heard the entire album, but under the circumstances that I heard it, I just didn't feel comfortable talking about unreleased portions of the album. So I knew about the Kendrick feature. I heard the Kendrick feature, and I figured, well, let it play out. Let the Clipse roll out their album how they wish. You know what I'm saying? And then let the fans have their moment. I wasn't looking to break a news story or do anything like that. I believe in the circumstances of which the album was played for me, it wasn't my place to do it, and it still isn't. But in this GQ article, they talk about it openly, so now it's public knowledge, and we learned something that we didn't know. I learned something that I didn't know reading this article. So originally, the Clipse album that God Sorted Them Out was supposed to be released by Def Jam, where Pusha signed as a solo artist. And didn't come out. Obviously, there with Roc, there was a delay. Def Jam, whose parent company is UMG, didn't like the Kendrick verse, or didn't like the idea of Kendrick having a verse alongside Pusha T. I'm gonna read the passage from GQ, which illustrates this. Again, shout out to Frazier, man, amazing work, man, amazing writer. Definitely a friend of mine and somebody who I've been a fan of and who I respect. So the passage says, if you expected the album last summer, the brothers sympathized. So did they. Pusha say they felt confident, proud, and assured of themselves when they presented the music to Def Jam. The label loved what they heard, except for Kendrick Lamar's guest verse on the thunderous Chains and Whips. The final version of the song that Pharrell teased, that's his first LV runway show, and the song Pusha says was the first to come out of their sessions. Don't be fooled by Pusha's interviews appealing for one last guest verse, and the Twitter jokes that he went to a GNX tour date to physically walk Kendrick into the nearest studio. K-Dot's verse homework has been turned in for a while now. So you saw on the internet when Pusha pulled up to Boston, I think it was Gillette Stadium, and it was like, oh man, he's going to get that Kendrick verse. The Kendrick verse had been in place, and that I knew the Kendrick verse had been in place for a long time. So here's the next paragraph. But after a summer of beef between their two biggest artists that resulted in the still ongoing lawsuit from Drake, Def Jam's parent company, UMG, blanched at the antagonistic optics of two of Drake's biggest enemies linking on wax. First of all, again, shout out to Frazier. I told you, right? Amazing writer. Antagonistic optics. You know what I'm saying? Just as a writer, like, son got bars just in the way he writes articles. But blanched at the antagonistic optics of two of Drake's biggest enemies linking on wax. Pusha calls their apprehension stupid, primarily because none of the bars in Kendrick's otherwise excellent verse could really be perceived as a shot or even a subliminal. It does, however, contain the stellar line, therapy taught me how to open up. It also showed me I don't give a fuck. All right, we're going to go into another passage. Pusha can barely contain his disgust recounting how the stalemate with Def Jam played out. This is Pusha's quote. They wanted me to ask Kendrick to censor his verse, which of course I was never doing, he explains. And then they wanted me to take the record off. And so after a month of not doing it, Steve Gawley, the lawyer over there, was like, well, we'll just drop the clips. But that can't work because I'm still there solo. But if you let us all go, ... Sure enough, Def Jam eventually agreed to release Clipse and drop Pusha as a solo artist, freeing the duo up to shop for a new home with a finished Clipse album and plenty more music in their pockets. Ultimately, Pusha says the endeavor was gratifying. It felt good to even see how other labels were buying for the project. Now, as they teased last week, with the picture in front of the label's plain insignia, they ended up at Jay-Z's Roc Nation, where they feel fully supported and energized. I think that synergy, just in a rap sense, is going to speak volumes, Pusha says of the partnership. And that's the end of the passage, man. Again, shout out to Frazier. This is kind of nuts. You know what I'm saying? To me, and we've been talking about this. This is what I have been alluding to. This is what many have been alluding to with this lawsuit. This is the danger of the Drake UMG lawsuit. You know what I'm saying? It could potentially change how business is done. Look, it's we already have one example of how it changed how business is done. More importantly, changing how business is done, because, you know, I also think the business needs to be revolutionized maybe in other ways than this. But more importantly than that, changes how the art is released. Changes how the art is released. Labels are now, UMG is now scared. And let me be clear, this is 100% on UMG being unwilling to stand behind their artists and their expression. UMG is in the wrong here for not being willing to stand up for their artists and their expression. But as a culture, at least me, like, I don't expect much from UMG in the terms of culture anyway. When it comes between maybe affecting their bottom line versus true artistic expression, I expect a company like UMG to protect their bottom line, right? But now they're showing us. Now we're seeing examples. This lawsuit has them extra cautious, and so they're scared that they would sacrifice dropping dope art. Like nobody says, like, yo, this, and the album is fucking dope. Nobody says, yo, this album is great. We have to drop the best art over here at UMG. We have to drop the best art over here at Def Jam. I mean, and if we're being real, there's not a lot going on at Def Jam right now, man. Like, if we're being real, and I'm not blaming the staff at Def Jam. This seems to be above their heads, but this would have been a real win for the label that has history in this, right? Def Jam hasn't, like, in a couple of years, really had historic, you know what I'm saying, like hip hop wins, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. So I've heard the verse many times. Rewind it back, I've read the lyrics, and without giving too much away, again, because I want the fans to have their moment, I want this to be rolled out the way that the Clipse want it to be rolled out. What I can say is, now that this information is out there, and what I know is the verse is less of a diss and more of a state of the union. That's the best way I can describe it. After one of the most wild years that hip hop has ever seen, Kendrick just kind of gives it a state of the union. Here's where we are now. Here's where I am now. Here's where we are now. Here's where I am now. You know what I'm saying? And that's the best way I describe it. And if it was up to UMG, we wouldn't hear it. At least not on their label. And it wasn't even the content of the verse that scared them. If you read the passage, it wasn't even necessarily the content of the verse. It was the optics, according to the GQ article. It was the optics of Kendrick and Pusha on the same song. Two guys that Drake has had beef with. Two guys that in recent years have released diss tracks against Drake. Two guys who have in recent years have bested Drake in the battle. Pusha with Story of Adidon, Kendrick with his plethora of records, ending with Not Like Us. So they're just scared of the optics, and because there's this lawsuit looming, and they don't want to chance it. And again, I blame UMG for this, but going back to Drake, when we talk, that is the danger of this lawsuit. That is the danger of this lawsuit. The effects that it can have on the art, how rappers now express themselves, how we engage in competition with each other, which is a part of hip hop. can now be changed on a major label level because Drake decided to launch this lawsuit and put Not Like Us square in the middle of what this is. It's dangerous, and it sets a crazy precedent that can change things. And that's what I've been saying this whole time. And I know there's some people who get me. There's some people who are like, well, you whatever, UMG was, sided with Kendrick and Drake and like, to those who didn't get what I was saying, basically what I'm saying, to those who didn't get what I was saying before, this is a result of it. This is how like weird shit can get as a result of this lawsuit. And it's not good. Hey man, but those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm gonna talk back. I know we're gonna talk about this one. All right, till next time. Peace.